Okay, Aleema everyone. Aleema Farahana.
Well, Aleema,
How
how's
are
everybody
you?
doing?
Good.
Good, good.
Good. So today is part 4 of our My Mind Matters module. It's been an exciting journey, and I hope our viewers have taken a lot of value out of it. And I'm just gonna jump right into it. Today we're going through emotions, because emotions is such a key part of our entire life experiences, and mindfulness plays such a big role on how we work through our emotions. And so what I want to do is pretty much just begin with the way we normally begin, and that's kind of take you through a quick 1-minute meditation. So just close your eyes and get comfortable in your seat. Just start to notice your feet on the floor. And if you're sitting on the floor, then just notice your body making contact with the floor. If you're sitting on a cushion, notice that contact between your body and the cushion. And just start to bring awareness to your breath. If your back is leaning against the wall, just bring awareness to that. And how your arms and your hands are resting. Just notice the connection of the different parts of your body to each other. Always keeping the breath with you. And let your weight sink right down into your chair. Or if you're laying down, allow yourself to just fall right into your bed or the mat on the floor, wherever you are. Keeping awareness on the breath. And if any thoughts are coming in, just note them, put them on a cloud and let them float away. And know that you're safe right where you are, and you're being supported. And as you continue to notice your breath, feel its strength in your chest or your abdomen, where it's bringing you the breath of life. And just follow it as it flows in and out of your body. You can be watching it like you watch the waves gently lapping on the seashore, where there is no need to rush it. Just allow it to flow. As the waves go back and forth, notice your breath flowing the same way. Nice and easy. Just enjoy it. And whenever you're ready, you can just open your eyes slowly. Just come back into the room with me. How was that for you?
It was really good. It was very relaxing up until I realized that I had an itch in my throat, and then I started to feel a little anxious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, am I going to be able to stop this cough and ignore it? Or am I going to just have to cough? It's funny, right?
Yeah.
How we hold back on things. Like, if we just ignore it, maybe it will just go away.
Away.
If we I ignore this emotion, maybe it'll just go away because it's going to make me feel uncomfortable. I'm going to feel like I'm disturbing the session. I'm disturbing the people. I'm going to disturb other people's peace. If I bring out what's really going on in my inner world, I'm just going to try and stop this cough. I couldn't, so I had to cough. So
and all that just from wanting to stop that cough, all those thoughts that you just described, just from wanting to stop that thought. So can you imagine what happens when we try and stop an emotion? And so,
especially those challenging ones, they
yes.
don't seem to have, it's not a happy ending because I created an unhappy ending. If I cough, I will disturb the peace of this moment.
Yeah. You see, it's always followed by a thought, because if you cough, you'll disturb the peace of this moment. But if you don't cough, you may not disturb the peace of the moment.
I'm going to be super uncomfortable. I was like, I feel like I'm going to choke right now.
So I'm actually glad you brought that up, because, so you coughed. So what happened?
I felt better, and I don't think the world came to an end.
There we go. And so you were happy, or happier at least, about that situation.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, so can you still see my screen, by the way?
I cannot, no.
Okay.
Angry.
Oh, hold on. This thing wasn't recording this whole time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I didn't see that button. Jeez,
it's okay,
you know,
everything.
When I got out of it and I went back into it.
It says recording. It says recording.
Is it recording?
It is. Okay, stop and pause. It's recording. Let me ask you something. Thank you. This is awesome. In that moment, what was your emotion?
Ooh, I almost panicked. I was like,
right. Ooh. Okay. So what was the emotions that came up for you? This is really good. These spontaneous things happen.
I know.
Because none of this is really rehearsed. We do put the content together beautifully, both of us. And then like these things happen in the middle that cause these emotions to arise. So Aleema, please talk to me about what emotions just came up for you just now.
So what came up was like, oh my God, we just went through some great content and I wasn't recording any of it. Because the button on my side.
What is that word for oh my God? What was that?
That emotion, like crap. Disappointment.
Okay, disappointment.
Is that an emotion?
That is. And this is what Aleema and I are getting at. So I'm probing you, right, in this conversation to identify certain words that we on an everyday basis use to describe emotions.
Yes.
Constantly, but also that we come from a mindset that if we're being told consistently by society that to be emotional is a problem, yet then Aleema and I are harping on the fact that we really do, as mindfulness is the awareness of the present moment and noticing in this moment what emotion is arising, then why is there so much pushback from a society that we've been living in, quite honestly, not to be emotional? Because what is emotional, a weakness?
That's the problem.
Right.
Especially when it's a negative emotion.
Right.
Because that's where the stigma arises from, that negativity is stemmed as a weakness, and you don't want to, every time they say stop thinking with your emotion, for the person who is thinking with their emotions, what tends to happen? They tend to now say, okay, oh crap, I shouldn't be thinking about my emotions. I shouldn't be thinking emotionally. And so now you're starting to layer up, you're starting to bury that emotion deeper and deeper.
So you're saying that especially those negative, and I like to call them challenging emotions.
Yes.
So those challenging emotions, they're saying, don't address those. Yes. Don't acknowledge that, or at least don't acknowledge them for too long. Maybe you can touch on it a little bit. Okay, but now, let's move on with life, because you've been kind of sitting on that emotion for a while.
Yeah.
So let's just go ahead and move on. So we'll come back to that, right? About like these challenging emotions and the words that we use to describe them.
Yes.
But yeah, if you didn't feel an emotion right now, given that you were just triggered because you thought that the program was not recording, mm-hmm. I mean, how would you even separate yourself? Like, how would you numb yourself to that experience? Exactly. That's not even possible.
Yeah. So, and so what I wanted to say next was pretty much that emotions, like, where do the emotions come from? Where is it that, you know, how do we know that we experience these emotions? And what I want to, what, I'm just going to get back into track. And so our mind, the way it relates to the world, actually determines whether we're miserable or whether we're not miserable. So what we need to do is become aware of these emotions instead of, you know, ignoring them or even getting overwhelmed by those emotions. And what normally tends to happen is that when you react to them or you act to them, it's either your emotions you're reacting to and acting to, or it's even somebody else's. And so, and we had mentioned that response reaction in the last module, and it creates a whole other set of things that you end up dealing with. Your situation just becomes challenging only because you have not been able to understand these emotions. You've not been able to meet these emotions. And so how do we know that we have these emotions that we should deal with? What do we do with them? First, we understand that we can feel these emotions in our body as well. So even the language that we're using, we're saying, I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel anger. And so that word feel is, and if you think about it, the word feel can be is normally experienced physically. I feel pain, I feel, you know, hurt on my leg, I feel this. But it's also can be experienced from an emotional aspect when we say, I feel happy, I feel sad. And so, and I'll give you an example. If you had to stand at the edge of the cliff, what would happen? What kind of emotions are going through you? You're feeling maybe fear, right? And that's an emotion. However, you can also be feeling your heart that's beating faster. That's physiological. And so what I want to say is that feelings don't just take place in our minds. Feelings don't just take place in our bodies, but they also take place in our minds. And what mindfulness does is it teaches you to bring these feelings down into our bodies. And that's how we deal with these emotions, because once we start to feel them in our bodies, we can start to let go of them and not let them have control over our lives, which is what tends to happen because we get caught up with emotions. We have so much to deal with when it comes to emotions, because life is just full of emotions. You experience, you know, one moment you're experiencing a high, the next moment you're experiencing a low. And I said before, right? You can go up and down consistently. And what is that one emotion that we all want to get to? We want to get to happiness. And so for us to get to the stage where we are just finding that peace within, we have to deal with the anger that arises. We have to deal with the joy that comes, the contentment. Everything that happens, we have to deal with it so that we can find the peace and come to that happiness, that equanimity that we talked about, that place of silence, that place of calmness. And an example I want to give is that when tragedy strikes, for example, how do people deal with that? They say, time will heal. So what happens during that time period? Are you actually really facing those emotions? Are you facing that anger that's coming? Are you facing that loss, that pain that you're feeling? Because it's a challenge that people don't know what to do. And so when they bury it, eventually something will trigger them that will release those emotions that were never dealt with. And when you ignore those emotions, they start to also manifest in your body in terms of, in terms of illness, in terms of disease. And I want you actually, Farahana, if you can give your example of your food containers. That was a great metaphor that you used to explain how this works a little bit, a little bit better. Then our viewers can also relate to that. So just give that story of yours. It's also a very interesting story.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. So my mom is a great cook, and whenever she visits me in Dallas, she's making sure that I'm well fed. But if she has to leave Dallas, just like all our moms probably do, is that they put food for us in the fridge. They'll make fresh food and they'll put it in the refrigerator. So I'll work my way through the Tupperwares, the containers, the food and all. And then, there'll be some leftovers. So I'll go ahead and put it in the refrigerator and work my way through all of the stuff. But after she comes back in a month's time, she'll open the refrigerator and she'll find like 3 containers from a month ago with leftover food that she made a month ago for me. It's still sitting in the refrigerator. So yes, obviously they're not as fresh as they were a month ago. And obviously they look slightly different. I mean, can you predict what they look like? They look a little furry, they look a little hairy, If it's a see-through container, you can see all of that. But if you want, you can volunteer to come and clean out my fridge. Are you literally going to open the container and empty out the contents and then save the container and wash it out so it's fresh and clean? Or are you going to want to toss that container right out? Probably want to toss the container right out. So the analogy here then is, why are we talking about rotting food? Because the rotting food is basically these emotions. So the emotions are like that have just stayed there and they haven't been dealt with. So I've shoved all this food in the back of my refrigerator and it's sitting there and it's gotten moldy. Similarly, if I don't deal with certain traumas, certain pains, certain life events that have happened that have caused me, especially the challenging emotions, right? Because I mean, if it's happy, excited, all of the good emotions, I mean, we want to talk about them all the time. Yeah. But times of tragedy that have caused us deep amounts of pain, we don't want to. So what we do is we just ignore them. Like I ignore the food in the refrigerator. And then what happens, like if it's built up and built up and built up for so long, then just like the food, it develops a certain stench, right? It's not so comfortable to look at. I wish I could just all of a sudden just go turn myself upside down, empty all the stuff out and then come as new, but that's not the case. That's not something I can do. The process to actually go inward into your container, which is this right here, and go sort out all the different places you've stashed these unhealed emotions, so that yes, there's a stench, and yes, it's going to be really hard to get through and sort out and clear out. But if you don't, just like Aleema said, it's going to manifest in your body as, physical discomfort, pain, stress, anxiety, disease. And if you split the word disease in two, it's dis-ease. It's not being in the state of easiness, right? Peace. So yeah, it's absolutely really important. And so this is what mindfulness does, is it helps you kind of go through and sort out your personal refrigerators to get out all the gunk from
all the gunk. And what I find also interesting, and I'm going to share the story here as well, is that even as you are getting into your mindfulness practice and you start to become aware of these emotions, something else will pop up, and it's called resistance. So you'll be operating from a space, and I'm going to give a personal example here because I think it's very important for our viewers to also understand what resistance is. And so I recently, it's only been about 10 days, I lost my fui. And it reminded me of the loss of my own father. And I came to a space where I was resisting feeling whatever it is that I was feeling as a mindfulness coach. So I'm aware of all those emotions that are bubbling up, but that resistance itself was stopping me from actually going into the direction of that emotion and sorting that out. And so what we did earlier as well is when we were, and so Farahana actually helped me walk me through this process to meet that emotion so that I could at least be able to move past that and be able to continue moving forward. And just that resistance, that awareness to that resistance, I didn't even realize actually I was resisting it. You brought that up for me. And so just that awareness to that resistance, that's your mindfulness practice right there. As soon as you're aware that you're also resisting these kind of these emotions, you are already being mindful about it, and then you know what to do next. Because if you leave emotions unchecked, it can become dangerous, not only for yourself, but for the people around you. Because you can react in a very disengaged way, because that anger can even come out physically on the people around you. And it happens. This happens. And so it is so important to be able to meet those emotions and sort through them so that you can release them. Because what does an emotion do when you're triggered? How do we, so if you look at this diagram on the next slide, we have to understand that emotions.
Before you go, because something came to me, and it was important because you said that when we feel the emotion, it comes out in our body language. So I'll tell you that when we were talking about, your aunt's passing, you said to me that I'm doing this. So this was your body language. And when you said the word resistance just now, I'm seeing your hand do this. And so it's ironic because we got into this conversation, right? That even though we teach it, there's opportunities in our life where we can allow the emotion to kind of temporarily visit and we observe it, but the autopilot, so, your brain went into autopilot saying, hey, you know what, this situation right here, these emotions that are trying to come up for me right now, that are trying to unfold, that makes me really uncomfortable. So the autopilot, Aleema, so to speak, is doing this.
Exactly.
But there's a more aware Aleema who has her practice going on, just like with y'all, you've already started practicing. So there's almost like the old version of you and the new version of you. So there's going to be this kind of working together where the old is automatically going to default to doing this, and the new one, right? You might not do it on the day you know that you should probably go to your accountability partner, because we talked about that, and say, hey, can you just hold space for me while I kind of just talk about what's going on for me? And then your accountability partner is there for you, kind of just helping understand what's going on. You might not do that. The old Aleema might still do this, but this one still has this awareness that something's trying to come up and I'm having some kind of resistance, but at least you're not having the resistance on autopilot. Because if you have the resistance on autopilot, it can remain on autopilot for a really long time and you'll just not visit it. You'll just become completely numb to that experience. It's just no, we're not going there. And you tell your every part, we're never going to visit this experience again. Never. Do you understand? We're never. So you kind of embody that we're never going to. But with the mindfulness practice, you start to embody at least a curiosity, at least somewhat of an interest that, there's a possibility we might revisit it, when I'm ready, when my accountability partner is there, So, yeah.
And it's important because we also need to understand what's the point of these emotions? Why do they come up? They come up because they're helping us to acknowledge and understand if you look at the diagram, they help us understand whether our needs are being met or our needs are not being met. And that's why we have these feelings and emotions that come up. And so depending on whatever stimulates us, it can create a reaction that actually directs us towards B, which is the cause of it, to understand it a little better. And eventually, when you think about it, the purpose of having an emotion is to serve us so that we can better understand our needs. That's the purpose of having our emotions. When we're happy and when we're joy and you're jumping in joy, it's because our needs have been met. And when you're not, when you're feeling sadness, anger, it's because our needs, our internal cause has not been met. And so when we're sitting in mindfulness, it helps us shift perspectives. It helps us make a choice so that we can respond accordingly. And we spent so much time talking about respond and react in the last module. And so mindfulness explores that area, and it slows you down so that you don't go from, trigger into complete, rage and anger, and then start to bury that. You meet it. You say, okay, my needs haven't been met. Why have my needs not been met? And you start to question. right? And
So let's talk, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to
So going back to the whole like default, right?
Yes.
Because we're constantly, you know, like so used to the default. So like we have to keep checking in on ourselves. Have I just snapped into the default, or am I becoming aware in this moment? So typically when the event stimulus happens, like some situation occurs in your life and you experience an emotion. Okay. So for example, and I'm going to come back to yours because that's much deeper, but I'll give a simple example right now. My son is not listening to me. He's not going for a shower. And I've told him 5 times, you need to go for a shower. He doesn't listen. That's the event stimulus. My emotion immediately is what? That I get really mad at him. Typically what happens is we in a conversation say, you know what, you did this and that caused me to feel this emotion. It is your fault.
Yes, the blame game.
The default will go from point A to C right away.
Yeah.
It's like in our minds, it's totally linear. It's just boom. This happened, you caused this, and this emotion was felt by me. It's important to realize between A and C, there's that point B that Aleema was talking about the needs. And that need, either met or not being met, is what causes the emotion. So it wasn't that Ilian not listening to me caused me to be angry. What caused me to be angry is in that moment, my need was not met. So what I have to do is go and find out what is the need? What need was not met? And really ask myself, like, why does Ilian need to go take a shower right now? Well, I need Ilian to go take a shower right now because we have to go to Jamaat Khana at 7:30. And that's why we need to hurry up because it's already 6:40. So we'll go back to you, right? Is when you were pushing. And the event stimulus for you then was what? Yesterday. Not your point B, but your point A.
Just remembering that like her loss and how.
So can we say your aunt's transition was the stimulus?
Sure.
Right? It was like it's what the trigger was.
Yeah.
Okay, so then can you, before we identify what your need was, so you had the stimulus, which is your aunt's passing, and then you have the emotions that you started to experience. Can you identify what those emotions were? Like use one word.
It was anger.
Use words, not one word.
It was anger and deep sadness because her passing also kind of triggered remembering the time when I lost my dad. And so that whole event was what was coming up for me. And so my emotions were also getting linked to, again, losing my dad, and the sadness and the anger and the fear and all that was coming up.
Okay, so that's awesome. Anger, sadness, fear.
3 big ones.
3 big ones. Now, first, so, and I'm going to take a guess at more, because I think even with vocabulary, when it comes to emotions, we really have such a limited pool. Like we have we think we have limited choices. So delving into, it's like when, I heard somewhere amazing from a teacher, a mindfulness teacher, that it's almost like, if you have like, you go to the store and you buy like a set of Crayola colors, but it's only the primary colors.
Yeah.
Like that, we have like maybe our top, I don't know, say 4 or 5 emotions.
Yeah.
Right? And we continuously use like angry, sad, excited, joy, happy, whatever, right? Those are like the basics. But what we need to really delve into and realize is that there is like 100 palette color of emotions.
Yes.
And so, wow, like, I mean, I'm looking at it over here. And, you know, I gave you a link, I think, right? We can certainly provide that later on, or I'll pull it out. I'll pull it up in just a second. But to go and do some research that when you're describing your emotions, whenever they're coming up for you, what are some additional words that you can use to help you describe what's coming up for you? So I'm going to guess for you, Aleema, right? Because you said sad, right?
Yeah.
Sad is like this big umbrella emotion. And under sad, Aleema, can I guess that you're feeling lonely?
Yes.
Gloomy?
Very.
Disheartened?
Mm-hmm.
Depressed?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't hear that last one.
Sorrowful.
Sorrowful, yes.
Mm-hmm. Under sadness, I've already named
5, yeah.
a few, right?
Yeah.
I'm also going to guess that with under scared now. So scared is the overall umbrella emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And funnily enough, I said in sad, lonely, but also in scared, you can also feel lonely.
Yes.
Like that fear of being alone, because this fear of not having this presence in your life anymore.
Correct.
So there's this void, right? So there's lonely, you know, like a sense of shock too. Like, you know, that is a deep tragedy. When you hear that somebody's loved one passes away, that's shocking.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a shock factor. You know, there's a terrified, what is life going to be without this person now? You know, feeling frightened, feeling almost desperate, like you're desperate, like, you know, you don't even have the answers to all these questions that are being bombarded at you. There might be a sense of being mad being the overall,
yes.
You know, like angry. Why did this happen to me? Why did this loss happen to me? Why was this person taken away from my life in this way? Could I have gotten, you know, a warning? You know, enraged with life,
yeah.
Furious, bitter. All of that, you know, those are some words that are coming up for me that, you know, I would guess are some of the things coming up. Now, do we want to deal with all of these emotions? It's hard.
Very hard.
It's icky. So we might as well just ignore it or push it away. Now, the thing is that, so we've identified the emotions, point C. Now, we got into a discussion yesterday about what that point B was for you. What need was not being met? Most likely when we have a challenging emotion like mad, sad, scared, tired, confused, and the list flows with all these different emotions to describe what's coming up. Most of that, the negative, like I said, I don't like to call it negative, but the challenging emotions comes from the fact that needs have not been met. So in that moment with your challenging emotions, we talked about like a certain need that had not been met.
It's their presence. Like the need that wasn't being met was the fact that I couldn't talk to my aunt anymore, and I can't talk to my dad anymore. Currently, in the context that we're, you know, we're talking about, that
Right.
I can't see them anymore, that we're not going to do anything in this realm together anymore. So those are all the needs that are not being met that are giving rise to the list of emotions that you've just described.
Yeah, and the need to feel connected, because really, how do we connect with people who are no longer here, right? So the need, that's now there's that void feeling that you're not going to be able to talk to them, you're not going to be able to connect with them. Your need is just to be like, I just need to know they're still with me, you know? And can I get that validation from somewhere? How do I go ahead and get that? So your need not being met, you know, the need that I just needed to say my last goodbye. You know, I didn't get to say my last goodbye. You know, why? Why didn't I get to say my last goodbye? So the need that I just needed that final, you know, to say goodbye, to maybe say the last I love you. So because of that, so understanding what needs have or have not been met is really important. Now, that was a very deep, you know, for those of you who've lost somebody, right? Obviously, you would be able to really relate to that. But also on an everyday basis is understanding you know, do we articulate, do we explain to people clearly or tell them clearly that, listen, this is a need that needs to be met.
Mm-hmm.
I have this need. We don't often tell that. You know, we're just, the event stimulus happens and boom, we have a reaction.
Yeah.
But even if we do have a reaction, becomes the default, it's important to turn around and ask ourselves, okay, this event stimulus happened, I'm experiencing this emotion, what need was not met, or what need was met that caused me to feel this emotion? In that manner, then, especially if it turns into an argument, because we're like, you know what, you did this, we
That
can
blame
go back, because yeah, exactly, the blame game is the default.
Yeah.
The blame game is go to straight to A and be like, you know what, you're a horrible human being. This is what you did, and this is what caused me to have this emotion. So instead of doing that, remember this triangle in your head and get really curious. Remember, mindfulness is about being openly curious. Become curious about, what is that point B? What was that need that was met or not met? Once you figure that out, then please go and tell event stimulus that, by the way, this need, you know, I felt this way because you didn't meet this need. And this was what I need. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you that. Now that you've told event stimulus what the need is, hopefully next time the similar situation occurs, event stimulus will know that this is something that's really important to Aleema.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah, she really needs this, you know? Or even say, hey, you know what? Go and tell event stimulus, this time I'm feeling super excited. I'm feeling very happy. I'm feeling very joyful. You know why? Because you know that need that hadn't been met last time? You actually, I'm giving you a gold star. Yeah. You get a gold star because that need was met. So, and that's why I'm feeling happy. So, yeah.
So it's great, and I'm glad we went through this like this, because what happens now is now you anticipate. You actually anticipate. You know how your body's going to react. You know that, you know, this anger, for example, you know, if we go back to anger, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna come up that there's a dreadful feeling that's coming up, and because you've already met that emotion, you anticipate that physiology, and you're able to tame it down. You're able to tame down the manifestation process before it goes completely psychotic, before you lose it. And so this is how mindfulness comes together with emotions. So that, and another example is, when you're triggered, you reflect back on what you know, what happened, and you sorry, I'm going to start that again. When you get triggered, you get emotional, and mindfulness helps you reflect on that by putting you in a metaphysical space. You become the observer of the situation you're in. And we talked about this last week. You get insights from it. This is key. When you're getting curious about those emotions, you're getting insights from it, and then you can choose the path. You can move, you know, that emotion in such a way that you're able to now release it better. You're able to respond better. And so that harmful effect of that emotion is actually diluted, which is the key. Because that anger that stays with you, that sadness that stays with you, it leads into something even deeper. Depression, it leads you into a space that you don't want to be. And we brought up that whole manifestation. You're in a space of dis-ease. And that's what mindfulness does. It dilutes that effect. It dilutes that emotion that could leave this lasting impression on your body for the rest of your life. So in effect, you've created this aha moment. You know, you've seen that awareness has brought you to the whole, you know, I've seen you, I've seen what you're doing, and I'm not going to let you take over. I'm not gonna pick up that shoe and flung it across the room, because I can see you bubbling up. You're bubbling up in me. And I like this quote over here by Mr. Keltner, who's a professor of psychology at the University of Berkeley. He says that mindfulness and awareness is saying we need to go in the direction of emotion and how to work with its power. That's key. How do we work with the power of that emotion? And that's what you know, we just did that. In fact, I was gonna do a practice with our viewers right now to sit with a specific emotion. So I think we can do that right now. And this is, and I want to let them know that when I had to go through my own release of this emotion through this resistance with Farhana, actually, we did this together. It's a similar practice that I'm going to guide you through right now. It's very similar to it. And it's something where it will allow you to just kind of, it puts you in a place of observation. So I want to ask our viewers right now to just get comfortable, and they can close their eyes. So, you can even do that. Close your eyes and notice again your feet on the floor. We did this earlier. Notice the contact that your body is making with your seat or the mat that you're sitting on. And just be upright but not stiff, and pay attention to your breath. And as your thoughts start to emerge, simply notice yourself thinking and come back to your breath. And just be in this space for a couple of minutes. So now we're going to generate an emotion in this space. And I want you to remember that you are in a safe space. So let's work with the emotion of anger. I'd like you to think of something that outrages you. Maybe it's the idea of racism, or the lack of compassion in the world, disrespect of the environment. And I want you to feel this anger. Think of a specific instance that makes you angry and focus on this anger. Feel what it feels like and notice how it feels in your body. Notice where it shows up. How is it affecting your physiology? Get right into it. Just go with it. Get really mad, because it's not right for this to be happening. I want you to feel the intensity of that anger. Now let's let go of it. Completely let go of that external stimulus. Whatever made you angry, just let it go. Put it on a cloud and let it float away. And instead, think of the sunrise over the ocean, or any other pleasant thoughts. Maybe the smile of a child, perhaps. And I want you to start to notice how your anger subsides. Feel the feeling slowly fading away. It may not be happening right away, but it is happening. And pay attention to your breath. You may still be feeling the afterburn of that emotion of anger still sitting in your body. So just let that go. If your shoulders stiffened, just relax them. If you had clenched your hands, bring softness to them instead. Just let that anger go. Pay attention to your breath. Feel it sipping away the anger out of your body. You can breathe in and breathe out. Whenever you're ready, come back into the room. And so what mindfulness does now for us is that it helps us realize that we can actually release that emotion. And so this little practice is something you can do consistently, and it will help you realize that you don't need to be carrying around this anger. You don't need to be carrying around this fear. And so you can have less fear once you become more intimate with it, because it's going to sit there in its pure form, and then you can just let it go. Mindfulness helps you that. It teaches you that. And there's another quote here that I like, is it says, when we have less fear and more intimacy and familiarity, we can let the pure emotion be there a little bit more. So you don't attach yourself to the emotion, you just let it go. Now, I want to also say here that mindfulness will not put you in a space about being, calm all the time and at peace all the time and you're happy all the time, because it doesn't really work that way, right? We're human beings after all. We go through ups and downs. But when we welcome these emotions and sit with them and let them go, remember, in the background, you have developed that equanimity. You've grown that stillness. And so that calmness watches you deal with it. It watches you let go of it. And then you return to it. And that's the beauty about this whole process. You're able to just observe and just let go. Observe and let go. And it's just like, it's just like the clouds in the sky. So for example, when you're happy, excited, sad, nervous, angry, the clouds are constantly shifting their form and they're moving on. And the same way, our emotions are doing the same thing. They're shifting constantly. And so if we allow ourselves to observe that, as opposed to getting attached to it, you observe it. How do you do that? By being in the present moment and noticing it, recognizing it. You can now disidentify from it. And how do you also disidentify from it? We mentioned it earlier. It's also in the language that you're using. So instead of saying, I am sad, I am angry, I'm afraid, you're using words like, I'm noticing sadness, I'm noticing anger, I'm aware that fear is coming up for me. And so that places you automatically in the space of observation, where you are curious about it, where you're open about it, and you're not judging anything. Because we mentioned, it's so easy to blame somebody, It's so easy to say, I feel this way because you did this to me. Instead, what you need to do is, I feel angry because I need. Remember, it's about identifying your need. And once you do that, you start to realize that you are able to have control over your own actions and your own reactions, and you respond better. And when you're going through this whole, I feel a specific emotion because I need this, also remember to include your why. So I'll give you another example. If, maybe you're in a classroom, right? And the teacher says to the students, I'm feeling frustrated, so that's her emotion, because I want to share these helpful tools for you. That's her need. And why does she want to share these tools with her students? Because she wants them to excel in their studies. She wants them to grow. So bring in your why when you're going through this process of observation, when you're getting curious. Always remember the why when you're discussing this, even when you're discussing this with whoever triggered you. If your partner triggered you for whatever reason, when you're sitting with it, go through this entire process and understand why it's so important for you. And remember that you are responsible for your actions. You are responsible for your reactions and not other people's. So if somebody does something to you, you take responsibility on your own feelings. You will take responsibility on how you will react, because you have that control. And so I'm just about to conclude this here and allow people to take away a simple 4-step process on how they can welcome their emotions. And the first step, and there's an acronym here that's going to be very easy for them to remember, is that you recognize. Recognizing is when you notice something is coming up. You don't layer it on, you don't ignore it, you don't suppress any of those feelings. You just start to notice. Use that language. I notice this anger rising, and start to identify where it's rising. Start to bring it from your mind into your body. I notice this anger rising in the pit of my belly. And once you acknowledge, and then step 2 is, once you recognize it, you acknowledge it, where you've accepted what has arisen, and you allow it to be there. You're not ignoring it. You don't want to shove it away really quickly. You just accept it and say, okay, you're here. And now you're giving yourself permission to feel that anger. Very, very important here. Allow yourself to feel it. So it's almost like you have a visitor knocking at the door. The visitor will come, that's your anger. And remember this, he will come, he will stay for a while. You're going to be curious about why they're there, and then they're going to leave. And so in this space, when you're getting curious about them, you're able to tame it a little bit. So this is a space where you can understand that anger, instead of anger being bad, you say, you just rename it. Anger is painful. And just let it be there. Let it sit with you. Then you investigate. That's step 3. So as it's sitting with you, you're exploring it. You are asking questions about it. And as Farahana said earlier, you're getting curious about it. What triggered me? Why am I feeling this way? And when you ask yourself these questions about it, you're now becoming more welcoming, and you're becoming less reactive. You're going to explore how it manifests in your body, and what it has come with. What has anger brought with it? Has it brought moments of sadness? Has it brought moments of helplessness? Again, remember that expansion of the vocabulary. And as we get close to it, we start to understand that it's not opaque. It actually becomes less dominant over you. And this closeness also loosens that hold it has for you. And when it does that, you start to get more insight. So step 3 is very important. And step 4 is non-identify. You don't attach yourself to it. And this is where you come from. I am so angry, I will never forgive you. Remember, this is a temporary state of suffering. And when you observe, it's the door to compassion. You're opening a door to self-compassion. And again, language is key. So this process allows us to accept what we may never be able to control, our experiences, but we can transform our relationship to these experiences. And so an easy way to remember it is R for recognize, A for acknowledge, I for investigate, N for non-identify. So it's RAIN. And I would love our viewers to be able to go home with this. I don't know if you want to add anything to it. I wanted to bring this image as our last image as we conclude this module, because this is what we started with, where when we have our mind full, you're constantly dealing, we had talked about constantly dealing with experiences and thoughts, but you're also constantly dealing with emotions. And so with mindfulness now, you want to be able to transform yourself to be that little puppy in the brown who's got, the image of the 4 trees in the sun. How? By being in the present moment. So I don't know if you want to add anything to this as we conclude.
So I just want to add a resource for everybody.
Yeah.
Because we talked about the feelings. And so you can go online, there's a feelings inventory list. You'll be like, this is basically your Crayola set for all your emotional words that you can use when trying to identify what's coming up for you. And so you'll find that with the Center for Nonviolent Communication, and their website is www.C as in Charlie, N as in Nancy, V as in Victor, C as in Charlie.org. So go there, pull up the feelings inventory, and you're going to find a whole bunch of different words to describe when your feelings have been satisfied versus when your feelings and needs are not satisfied. So go ahead and definitely check that out. Also, when you said, let the emotion kind of knock on your door, I kind of heard in my head, Odi, you know, like we say, Odi. And then the other person, what's the response usually when you say Odi? Karibu.
Yeah.
Oh, karibu, right? Welcome. So I kind of felt that I wanted to share something. I remember when I wrote this, I was feeling really sad, and just different creative ways to process, especially those challenging emotions. Write about them, write a story about them, write a poem about it, paint a picture, draw a picture, compose music, do something, turn that emotion into something creative. And so, you know, I post a lot on Instagram, and so I was feeling sad, and, you know, because you said this knock on the door, I just wanted to share this with everybody. Hello, sadness, you're back. I hear you knock on my door. I feel your subtle lingering. You come with a message. I know this. I respect you showing up as a guest. I will let you in, as I am aware you are guiding me to heed your presence in my present moment. You showing up is important, and I must not reject you nor ignore you, because you are here for a purpose. I notice your presence makes my heart feel heavy and evokes a curiosity in me. What beckoned you? What initiated your invitation? Let me pay attention for a while. Let my curiosity enlighten me to identify what lured your return. Once my curiosity has healed what needs healing, you can be on your way back out the door. I will thank you for showing up as you take away with you what needed to leave that door with you. Thank you for showing up. So, you know, invite it with curiosity, just like Aleema said. Don't reject it. You know, just notice, allow it to just unfold. And if you kind of wonder what to do with it, if you feel like anxious, you want to do something with it, you know, just write about it like that. But yeah, thank you guys, everybody, so much. We hope that you got something, some tools, at least for mindfulness, in your mindfulness toolbox to start using. Hopefully you've already started using, but please be sure, if you like this content, to like it and to share it with people who you feel would be interested in starting their mindful journeys.
Yeah, so thank you as well. And I think Farahana has said everything in our you know, conclusion. It's been such a fantastic journey, even for I think for both of us, to be able to experience this and share this with our viewers. And so thank you, Farahana, for co-hosting this with me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and okay, so everybody else, continue your practice and stay safe. Take care.
Bye.